Okay, so here we go. Getting ready to start step 4. Step 4 is really a preparation step to move on to step 205. What we're going to do in this step is not really so much change the way our site looks. We can see here in step 4, if we look at step 3, the only thing that changes is a little bit of the body. But for the most part, what's going to change in step 4 is preparing us to integrate a database into our website. And so before we start adding a bunch more PHP and database calls and things of that nature, it's a good idea at this point to go ahead and start cleaning up. Do something we call refactoring. Refactoring is really important. It's something that you should do often. What you're doing is you're looking for repetitive code, you're looking for bad code, you're cleaning up your code, and you're making sure that what you're writing is not redundant or you're using crazy variables all over the place. And so essentially, to give you an idea of what that means, if we go and we view source on step 3, and then we view source on step 204, we will notice quickly just in the head HTML document that quite a few things have changed. Simple things from just closing this up and cleaning up our commenting a little bit, adding additional comments, making sure that our code is more legible and flows nicer and that people can read it. We added a couple meta tags. We want to make sure that we're dealing with IE Edge, making our site compatible. We want to make sure that we're controlling our viewports so that the phones, when you access the site with a phone, it does not scale the website because we want it to be responsive. Additionally, we've done a few things, and you can see if we step out here that we added those. Additionally, we've gone ahead and we've gathered all of our resources that we use, external, internal. Instead of creating dependencies to reach out and grab those resources such as Bootstrap, like we're doing now from our CDNs, what we're doing is we're bringing them back to our site so we actually can work on WAMP if we choose to do so. We're not dependent of being connected to the internet or anything limiting us from working in a situation where we might not have access to the internet. Additionally, with refactoring, other things that we're doing is we know that we're using header-resize and footer.css throughout the entire website. So to have them in multiple files is somewhat nonsensical. And so what we're going to do is consolidate these files into our styles.css, as we can see here. Additionally, we're going to move any external JavaScript into a file. We're going to create a file called app.js, and we're going to move it into there. So let's go ahead and move forward, and let's go and introduce ourselves to what code compare is. All right, so we took a look at our 2 pages, and there's a much better way of seeing what has changed in code, especially when you're dealing with PHP, because you don't actually see the native code, the code that produced the results. I use a tool called Code Compare. It's a file and folder merge tool. They call it a merge tool, compare tool, whatever you would like to call it. And what it allows us to do is it allows us to actually go ahead and see between 2 folders. I'm taking my 203 folder and my 204 folder that I used to create the lesson. Now, if you ignore the changes folder down here, what you see is it shows you this is the 203 folder this side, and this side is the 204 folder. The difference between the 203 and the 204 folder is quite a bit. Because in this step, we take the footer and header resize CSS and we consolidate it into our style CSS. So you can see that it's telling us that our style CSS has changed. And so right now we're doing a folder compare, but if I double click on that and I take a look at it, it actually shows me the inside of the file. And what it does in green, it shows me what was added, or in red, it shows me what was taken away. So in this case, none of the code that was there was taken away. We've just added the header in the footer CSS. In addition to that, we have our JS folder. And so we brought a lot of files over from our JS, from external resources where we pulled in files from CDNs from repositories. And as we can see, we actually got rid of our footer and our header-resize.js, and we added them in there, as we said. You can see that we added some JS files, Bootstrap, HTML5 Shiv, jQuery, and Respond. They were files that we were actually pulling on externally, but we want to bring them local so that we can actually work on our local machine. You can see nothing has changed inside the data folder. By the way, these note folders, these underscore notes folders, are folders that are created by Dreamweaver to keep information in there. You can just ignore them, don't worry about them. And then you'll see in the include folder, we can actually see that a few things have changed. And that's what's in blue, just like in styles. So if we were to look in the config, by the way, we should actually just see the one change, which is the 03 to 04. And you can see that it's highlighting it and letting us know that that's where the change was. Additionally, we've added a couple files. We added login, logout, profile, register, and settings.php. We've added them to the root of our folder, and so they're showing up in green as new files. The change folder, that's for me, that's to keep the change log and things like that in. And you can see actually I took it and created a folder because I use it to put all the assets in that we need for the change log. So that's how Code Compare works. What's really cool with Code Compare is if I were to go out and look at the file that we're going to work on, so I can just go ahead and grab it. So I did our normal first step, which was copy the 203 folder to a 204 folder. And if you notice, nothing has changed. It's all the same. It's all the same folder as it should be because that's what we copied over, and that's where we're going to start. To complete the overview, just wanted to share this tool with you so that you are exposed to it and have some feeling. All the file changes are in the changelog, and changelog has changed a little bit. And all the code changes, the final code changes, are all in these expandable, collapsible panels, and they are selectable. So for those of you having difficulty, this is the last resort to come and copy and paste. I am going to copy and paste them myself for the lesson to make things move along faster. But even the added files, you can see added files and then the code that would be inside those added files, so you can actually reference them as well. Additionally, we have the add external resources. These files are available for download. All you have to do is click on them, and then of course show in folder. And when you show it in your folder, what you do is of course just right click on it and send to, extract all. And then we extract. And there's our JS files that we need to just go ahead and move into and I'll go over that step with you. As a matter of fact, while we're here, why don't we go ahead and get started and take our JS files, our extracted JS files, and we can take them and we can go ahead and put them right into our Dreamweaver. So we'll close the step 3. I copied step 3, which means now we have our step 4 folder. And I'm going to open up the JS. I'm going to select all those files that I extracted, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop them right in there into my assets.js folder, and you can see they have all gone in there. The next thing I'm going to do is, while we're doing this, I might as well go ahead and we're going to download the CSS files as well. And they are downloaded, so now we can go over to, we'll open up Dreamweaver first and then overlay our window so we can see it, and go to our downloads folder, and we'll highlight our CSS file and we'll extract them as well. Go get them. And these are the CSS files that we're adding, so we can go ahead and just drag them right into our CSS. Great, so we actually just got a first step done, and at this point it really should not affect how we see anything on our site at the moment. But while we're here and while we're doing that, let's go ahead and go to WAMP and go to our local host, and let's bring up what we're going to be working on here. So I'll go into my 204 folder, and there we go. So I know my 204 is working. We already copied over our CSS files. I'm going to close these out so that we don't get confused. I leave my changelog open, have my assignment open, and my local host with my step 204 that I copied and have placed my external resources into that I downloaded from the changelog. Okay, so now I got my Dreamweaver up, have my browser up. I'm going to go ahead and actually reduce that in size a little bit so that I can we can see what's changing, things like that. And we'll just put it like so for now. And my step 204. So now we're ready to get going, and I'm going to use the changelog to reference all my changes. And I've noticed that I believe I have one file in here that I did not include that I will have to include then, which is the config.php. So let's go ahead and let's just start with that one right away. And the only thing that's changing in there is our actual site name. So we're going to update that to 4 and save it. And as we always do, let's close that code compare so we're not getting confused with it. And let's go take a look and make sure that our change applied. It did apply. There it is, 204. So that's it for our config. The next thing that we're going to update is our header. Our header file. And the reason that a lot of the changes are going to take place is, first of all, we want to clean it up, make it more readable, more user-friendly, and we want to actually take this function and move it into a file that we create called app.js. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to go create a new file. We're going to call it app.js. And in our app.js, if we go and look at the changelog, let's take a look at what that looks like. We can we took care of our external files, and in our app.js file, we actually are taking the 2 JavaScript files that we're using. Do I dare say 2? Let's go and check this out again real quick. We have our header-resize. So actually what we're going to do is take our header-resize.js file, and we're going to move it into our app.js file. We're going to move the code that we're using in here into our app.js file. Now if you notice, this is a jQuery onload function. Everything inside here is saying when the window is loaded, run these scripts, run what's inside of here, and make these functions available. So what's really nice about this is what we can do is we can go ahead, and inside of this file is where we can actually move that scroller event listener. So we can move it out of our head, and we can literally go ahead and paste that inside there. And not only can we literally go ahead and paste it inside there, but if you notice, I got rid of the function itself, because all we were using the function for is to call the code block when the page loaded. So if I go ahead in my app.js and I put it down here, What'll happen now is when the window loads, that'll be part of the call. That'll actually be part of the call. And how do we know that for sure? How do we test that and make sure that it's going to work? And also our header resize as well. How do we get that in there as well? What we do is basically go into our HTML file. Let's get rid of this script. We'll save that. And the crazy part about this, and this is why I allow you to, when you're done, I encourage you to try to do this without copying and pasting. But in the very end, it's not a bad idea if you have errors or things like that you can come in here and you can actually, just copy and paste everything over. But right now, what we're going to do is we want to get rid of this script. This is the script for the header resize. So if we go ahead and we get rid of that, we hit save, and that's in our footer, and we go back to our header. And up here in our header, one of the things that we have to do, is we actually have to go ahead and include, if you remember, our script was down here, is go ahead and include our app.js so that it pulls in that code. Because if we were to go out to our site right now and take a look, what we would find is that that no longer works. So if we go out to here, to our header, and we put in our script tag, let's go ahead and stick our script in. And we want our script to go ahead and be assets, gotta spell it right, assets /JS /app.js. And let's go ahead and save that and see if we get everything back. So as we're looking, we can go ahead, we can see we do have it working, and it will definitely is coming from one file now. It's all coming from the app.js file, and it's being pulled in by the header include, by the app assets in the header file. For this lesson, it's important, as I'm trying to make a point, but just showing you the changes that I'm making at this point, which is why essentially I'm allowing this lesson pretty much to be conducted as a copy and paste, with your opportunity to focus on understanding more of what changed, how it changed, why it changed. And so the way that we're going to walk through this lesson is we're going to start with the header include. I'm going to come out and I'm going to grab. We changed our config. You'll see that on top once I make these adjustments to this file. And what we're going to do is we're going to take and copy and paste the code for our header. And we're going to go back and we're going to select all and paste in there and save it. Now, instead of trying to explain everything in here, what I'm going to do is go ahead and pull up my code compare. I'm going to highlight one of the areas and I'm going to hit enter, and you can see the files that we've added, the app.js, those things that we added. You can see the files that we made changes to. So here are config. If I double click on the config, it'll show us that we changed the 3 to the 4, which is great. I'm going to close this other one so we don't get confused. And let's go look at the header. So we changed a ton of code in here, actually. And to be completely honest with you, in preparation for the class, this took me quite a bit of work to go ahead and prepare this lesson and getting the code together. And let's stay focused on the two objectives of this lesson. The first one is to get exposed to refactoring, what it is, why it's good. how we do it. And then the second one is to position ourselves to begin programming PHP with the database. So right out of the gate, we can see it's always nice to clean up your code. It's always better to have clean code. And up here, just changing the commenting, making it look nicer. The other thing while you're refactoring that can be really interesting is that you quickly identify and are able to notice when things are missing, or when you need to make some changes. The idea of refactoring, you never want to introduce new functionality. As a matter of fact, honestly, you want to run a set of tests. You use scripts and you do testing against your code, and you want your code to pass all of those tests. And then you want to go in and refactor, clean your code up, and consolidate the code where possible. Bring, just as we did with the app.js file and the header-resize, bring things together where it makes sense, and just do cleanup activities. But it's really not the time to start introducing new code. That's not the idea, because you want the code that's refactored to pass all the same tests that it passed before you refactored it. One addition I did make in here was just to make us IE compatible for Microsoft Edge. And you can see that I added that in there. Our viewport is there. I put some spacing. You can see that I got rid of the CDN call for Bootstrap and added a call for localhost for Bootstrap. I put in HTML5 shim and respond.js. These really are more to support when semantics. We learned about these before. They're there for semantic elements for browsers that cannot handle it. The next thing we can look at is, we have our animations. We pulled that down from the repository. We did that with these as well, so that they're local to our machine. If we were to shut off internet access, once we have everything local, then we're able to continue developing, even if in an airport without better yet, how about on an airplane without internet access? We have our style sheets. We can use they're local. We are consolidating header and footer styles, as we saw with the files disappearing, with them being deleted. We moved our script, our JavaScript, into our app.js. We no longer need this window onload init because it's inside an onload function. We are pointing to our app.js. We'll talk about placement of JS files, CSS files at a later time. That's really not for this class. You can see we just basically did a little code changing inside our h1 tag, and that's it for the header.include.php file. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at our footer now. At this point, our footer, the only thing that we really changed in there is we got rid of that one line of code. And as you can see, just from the mess that we have as far as JS files go, refactoring is a great idea in here. And so we're going to go ahead and move down to our footer file, and we'll talk about the changes that we make in there. I'm going to grab the code in here. I'm going to copy it and bring it over to my Dreamweaver. I'm going to close the header file so I don't get it confused. And I'm going to select all in the footer and paste. So part of refactoring is, of course, commenting and indenting, getting your indenting better, you're laying your elements out better for to be able to read. And so now we're doing our footer include, and we'll go over to our compare, and it's letting us know that it was updated. Do you want to reload? And we'll go ahead and say yes. And now we're going to see some serious changes. For the most part, yes, I updated a comment a little bit with a little more information, added some more information on the divs for comments, so that we know where the opening div resides. Indenting, I made the indenting compatible so that when you actually view it in view source, that the elements line up, the opening and closing elements tags line up for the elements. And you can see I really did not make any HTML changes in the footer other than indenting and cleaning up a little. The biggest changes that have happened here is down here we have this long string of 203, this long string of JS files, script calls. What we did do down here is we basically cleaned that up quite a bit. We brought our jQuery min local, it's in assets.js, our bootstrap min local, it's in assets.js, did a little better commenting on the body and the HTML tags. And that essentially is our footer, what has changed in our footer. So we'll go ahead and we'll close that. We've covered our footer, our header, and our config now. So let's just keep going down the list in our change log. And now it's time for styles. One of the things that you know about the styles is that we deleted the files for styles. And also need to update in there about deleting for the JS. So actually, let's back off of styles for a second and let's just go wrap up our JS. If we go back over to Dreamweaver, let's close out our footer and we have our app.js. Let's close out all of those. What we know that we did is we took that header resize code and we put it inside the app.js. So let's go ahead and let's get rid of that. Excellent. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to move, we're going to keep our current code in here, and we're going to move the styles. Let's do a select all and paste all this in. And let's just go do it in our code compare again. Let's look at what we did. Refresh. We can see that we removed our header resize. Shows us that it's deleted from our JS over here, which is great, which is exactly what we wanted. And now we're working inside our styles. And inside of our styles, we can see that we added animate and bootstrap, which we want. And what we're trying to do is get rid of footer and header. And we can do that. We can go in and we can delete footer and header. And this is why. If we look in our compare, what we can see is that we added, so this is the original from 203. And then what we did is we took, first of all, we moved the import to the top of the CSS file. This is importing Google fonts from our footer. Then we went ahead and we did our header resize CSS. And that's what all of this CSS in green right now is that we're looking at is from our header resize. And if we keep scrolling down, we'll hit our original CSS, which is right there. And you can see it picks it up and starts scrolling with it. And nothing has changed there. And that's the end of our inside out CSS. And then we begin our footer CSS. And again, if you recall me saying I moved the import because CSS wants the imports like fonts or things like that to be at the top. Anything that's importing, we want at the top of the file because it's going to be leveraged and used throughout the file. So with those changes in place with our CSS file, what we can do now is we can go out to Dreamweaver and we're going to go ahead and get rid of those, the header and the footer CSS. And so we'll go ahead and do an edit, delete. And at this point, we should be able to go back and take a look, refresh, and we can see now that these were deleted over here. And it's just showing us in red, like, hey, you have that here, but you don't have it here, which is good and fine. That's perfectly fine. The other thing we can do is occasionally, and it doesn't mean it's always going to work because we're changing so much code, is go in and take a peek, make sure that things look right. Let's check our JavaScript. Need to close that up a bit. There we go. We're good with that. Bring this down. Looking at everything's looking good. Links are going to where we want them to. Great. Great. So we can go ahead and we can close our style CSS as well. And then The next thing that we want to do is start adding pages to position ourselves for the up and coming uh, database integration. Okay, so what we're going to do is come back here to Dreamweaver, close our include, close our assets. Let's make sure, take one last look at our JS. This is what all should be in there. Take one last look at our CSS. We're good there. Our data has not changed. And we'll close that. Because of the fact that we're going to start integrating with the database, we're going to go ahead and do that with some PHP files instead of dynamically pulling them from the JSON. We can work our way backwards then, but we're actually going to start creating those files. And what we're going to do here is close out, just make sure we have a clean slate to work on. And we're going to come over and we're going to go to our added files. We know that we have added our external files, and we have created and added our app.js file. So we're going to go ahead and start with our profile.php file. And the way we're going to create this file basically is go ahead and copy the code that's in there. Go over to Dreamweaver, new file. We'll call it profile.php. And let's open this file, select all, and then paste our code in. And basically what we're doing is exactly what we're doing in the index file. If you look at what we do in the index file, and the only thing we're replacing is the get page function with some code, with something to look at. Everything else is in there and good to go. So we'll close out that index.php again to avoid confusion. We'll come into our profile, profile.php page. There it is. Let's go ahead and let's save that. And the cool thing with this now is, honestly, all the pages are pretty much the same. So we can just take our login, and we know that it's going to say login. And so we'll go back to here. We'll hit highlight profile page and hit Control D for duplicate. We'll call it login. Open it up. Come down here, just change this so we can see it. Login. Probably a great time to actually go and make sure that these pages are working correctly. They're calling the right files before we go and keep duplicating it. That would be a wise thing to do. So profile.php, and there we go. We can see that's working. Login. Awesome. Go back to Dreamweaver. Let's duplicate it again. Control D, Command D if you're on a Mac. Logout.php. Whoa. Go ahead and call that one logout. Logout. If you noticed on the login page, I did not click save, so it carried over profile instead of login. Now on logout, I did click save, so I'm going to Control D on that. And I believe the next page that we want to create, we have login, logout, settings, and then register. So we'll come back over to here. Log out, we'll call settings. For the settings page, I believe what we put in there was just update your profile. So we're in our settings page. Update your profile, and let's go ahead and copy that one. Control D, and let's call this one register. Let's go see what we put for register so we're consistent with our code. And this one we put create an account. So we'll go to register, open that up, put in here, create an account. Control V, save. Let's go test our remaining pages. Log in, log out, settings, register. Awesome. And so it's pretty obvious what we'll be doing with our next step. Our next step, we're actually going to start on the profile page because what we're going to do is learn how to create a database, put some data in it, and pull it out to the page. And so before we'll create a fake account inside the database and pull it out to profile, and we'll start there. At this point, we've covered all the files. It's kind of a short and easy lesson, but not so easy because there's just so much room to get lost. So whatever you did try to do, I would recommend going through the files. Again, I'll put the update files on the config, and we have a delete that we need to add to the changelog. But I would step through the changelog, do the copies, and try to understand exactly what it is and why it is that certain code was replaced. We definitely have a much cleaner slate now, and we can move forward with our integration of database interactions. So in our next step, 205, we'll start with creating a database and putting in our profile.